acquisition of intellectual property and trade secrets, in other words, theft. But actually what you're looking for when you're doing industrial espionage is specific secrets, specific things, which it's not like stealing like a Picasso or something like that. You know, think about a chemical corporation which spends tens of years, maybe, sometimes. I mean, I know in the aerospace industry, a project lasts for 10-15 years before it's completed for an helicopter, for example. So you do a lot of research on this little formula for a pill for the headache, or to just, you know, relieve a sore throat, and or for AIDS or whatever. And you kill a lot of animals doing that, because, you know, you need to experiment on animals, and maybe sometimes you experiment it also on human beings secretly. Anyway, you have to have a huge setup and a lot of money to do that research. And then after many years you have this little formula which stays in a floppy disk. Okay, if you know what the target is and who are the people working on this thing, and you can get this formula, you saved all this money, so you can get competitive against this chemical corporation, for example. And there are a lot of ways to do that, and not only hacking, but hacking is a part of it, and is becoming a big part of it nowadays, just because everything is linked, everything is handled by information systems, especially in the countries that do this type of researches, like the Western countries. So, now, this is, I mean, since 1990s, Western intelligence agencies on this. I mean, there are a lot of open source examples of this, like, for example, the Echelon network, which was uncovered by the Omega Foundation, which was led by a British guy many years back, I think in 1996. Which was, you know, what Echelon is. I mean, it was this big espionage network which was said to be used to protect the G7 countries from, actually, mostly the English-speaking countries, because the members of this network were just USA, Canada, UK, New Zealand, and Australia. And you know how this thing worked. I mean, they just said that they were getting all the information, storing them, and then searching through them. And they had all these people looking through this information when there was no technology. Then, as the technology got better, they got software to search through these things, for keywords, for all these type of things. And everybody thinks that it is, you know, it was to protect the Western world. In actual fact, there are this type of network and others. They were mainly used to exploit the research and vulnerabilities of other countries not part of that array. A commercial capability, like, for example, having a new contract in a new country for billions of dollars, finding new oil somewhere, crude oil, or other things like that, new research on military equipment, like, for example, airplanes or helicopters. So, I can give you some examples also of this, which are different from the Echelon networks. For example, here we mention Israel. So Israel is a country which is very involved with, has a very high security awareness, all the population has, and also the corporations. And a lot of the research that has been done for a lot of instruments, like for companies that work for they come from Israel. I mean, I don't know if some of you ever worked in the industry and have ever been approached by an Israeli company. Most of them deal with security, so security software, security hardware, security encryption, anti-fraud system. And for example, in the anti-fraud system, there are a couple of companies, which I'm not, of course, going to mention the name, in the lawful interception business and fraud management business, which they deal, for example, with phone traffic, with CDRs, you know, they are the records of the phone traffic, and with interception of voice, data, and everything. And these companies, most of the time, they have been known to go and propose contracts which were totally unbelievable. For example, they gave 95% of discount. So can you imagine how can they survive with 95% of discount? They probably were sponsored, somebody could say, and they probably are, in fact. Some of these companies' software and hardware have been found in the past to be backdoored, and that's, I mean, they think about their national security, and I can understand their point of view, but that's what was happening. I wish I could tell you what the companies were, but you know, it's not good. So we have business intelligence is a big word. There are a lot of tools which are being used for business intelligence, like for example autonomy is a big tool which is being used also by the Department of Defense of the United States, and other business intelligence tools. There is an Italian one, there is a French one, there is an Israeli one. And mainly what they do is search intelligence data like the web. So the web is their main target. And try to sort the information so they can alert you before, you know, you find with Google the thing that something is happening and something has been published. The effectiveness of this alone is not that much, because I mean, you know the thing just 5 minutes before you would have known it anyway with looking in Google. You have automatic alerts, so that's maybe what's helping, but alone this thing is not actually helping in competitiveness. So, just before getting to the topic, we need to say one thing, that when you're dealing nowadays with these subjects, intelligence and competitive intelligence and corporations, situational awareness is the key word. So you need to, I mean, I just can give you an example with fraud. Okay, there is, I've been working for some corporations where at the beginning they were saying, oh, I have no security problem, I mean, I have no fraud, I have nothing. I mean, the problem is that you go to, as I was telling you before, you know, fraud and things like that, negative things, they are competitive matters, you know, strategic, so it's bad to say that you have them. But it's even worse to not know that you have them. You know, maybe you don't tell it, but if you don't even know it, that's becoming really worrying. And some of these companies prefer not to know it, so they can say that they don't have it, unless, you know, instead of handling it. And a good example was in a big telecommunication operator about 6-7 years ago, where they said that they had no telephone fraud. In actual fact, they were not detecting it. They had no fraud management system. So there was a good reason to say that they didn't have it, just they didn't have the statistic for it. So, I mean, this you can read afterwards, this, you know, philosophy stuff, you know, Sun Tzu and Napoleon Bonaparte. Just to tell you that sometimes it's not how big you are, but how smart you are that makes the difference. Okay, so this is another important thing. When you are dealing in this business, when you are working in this business, like doing competitive intelligence, which is not illegal to do competitive intelligence if you do it in the right way, but there is a very fine line, and it's difficult sometimes to not cross this line. So everybody needs to be really careful when they do it. Okay, so talking about information systems or IT systems, a lot of attack methodologies that they are being used nowadays, and some of these have started also a few years back, but they all exploded after this famous 2001 September 11. They are this. So there have been a very high growth of botnets and autonomous agents being built just to collect data and send them to a single source. Then you have the classical social engineering thing, exploiting human vulnerabilities, and you wouldn't, I mean, whoever of you did social engineering before, you know how vulnerable is the human brain. It's worse than any type of operating system you ever had. I mean, you just need to cuddle the human a little bit and he would tell you anything. And sometimes just to find the right way to ask him the question would lead him to tell you anything, even the most confidential or secret thing for him. Then you have the big mouth, the ones that have to demonstrate. You know, this is a psychological thing. I'm a psychologist actually, so being a big mouth is a pathology from my point of view, because you need, you know, it's a syndrome to demonstrate that you are at you are capable, and you always comparing yourself with somebody which is near you, so you need to tell your things always, and sometimes you tell these things too loud and too much. Then there is information leakage. Sorry? Okay, I thought somebody talked. Information leakage and data manipulation, and then you have open source gathering, which we were talking about before. Sometimes in open source you do find some very interesting things just because somebody put them there by mistake. Like, for example, I remember in another company they published on the website all the list of their top key people, key top managers and the key people, which was the strategic people, with all their email addresses and telephone numbers, name of the spouse, etc., etc. It was very interesting actually. And then you have the employees' exploitation. So besides the home PC confirmation, you know that most of the employees, they take the work at home. So sometimes you don't get to the company, you get to their home. And okay, mailbox hijacking, but the employees' exploitation also is a social engineering thing, because you find disgruntled employees, and a disgruntled employee would do anything just to get even. Okay, and that's the most dangerous type of human in a company. Okay, so here we have a very complicated thing. You have state. The state must spend a lot of money and justify all the money that it spends. So they build all these big teams of analysts and people that verify the analysis of the analyst, and people that translate the verification of the analysis of the analyst, and then all this big complicated thing which costs a lot of money. And then you have this very simple thing. So this is the modern espionage process flow. This is a thing that happens, is being done by groups of people, which actually, what I forgot to tell you is that recently, in the last 4 years, there was a big growth of organizations, asymmetric of organizations, like people, getting together and networking together, just with the purpose of stealing information and selling them to the best buyer. So if you find the correct, if you are in a big corporation and you want to know what your competitor does, if you know one of these organizations or one of these people that connect you to these organizations, you can actually get it, provided that you have the budget to pay them. And in many cases, as far as I know, they are also very effective. So you have once you know what the target is, you have the open source intelligence gathering. This is how these organizations work. Then you have the target definition and acquisition. What do you mean, target definition and acquisition? You have, for example, I don't know, the chemical industry we were talking about before. So you need to know that this chemical industry is a multinational corporation with maybe 200,000 employees and, I don't know, 100 sites around the world. So what you need is that little formula. So where is that little formula being produced? So you need to know who are the people working on research on this formula. They usually publish, articles or white papers or things like that. A lot of times they go to conferences like this one, on the chemical business, of course. And often they leave their business card, and you just need to have their business card. If you know who the person is, and in their business card you can find all the data you need to exploit the thing. Then you do the target vulnerability assessment and profiling. Let's say that the site that you need to target is in Japan. Okay, so you need somebody that can read Japanese, and you need to do a vulnerability assessment of the site to see how you can get in where these people leave the data. Then you do exploit generation. So this is a process flow. You have a team that does exploit generation. You say, okay, I have this thing, I have these vulnerabilities, I don't have exploits. Can you do them for me? Yes. And they sell them to these people. Then they do the attack infrastructure setup, which means you cannot attack it from your own site. You need to have encrypted file servers in another country where you don't have a rogatory from the country where you are doing the crime, where you're actually, committing the crime. So if Japan is the country, for example, I'm just doing an example with Japan. If Japan is the country, you need not to have, this server in Japan. Otherwise, they would, the police, just in case, would go there and take it and do a forensic analysis on it and maybe find you. So you need to find encrypted servers somewhere else. You need to find shells. Maybe you already have the setup, but you need to to be sure that this setup is just tailor-made for that target. And setup